Hi, everyone. It's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And joining me today is Aisha Braveboy. Welcome. Awesome. Welcome, Aisha. How
Hello,
are you?
hello. Great to be with you today.
Certainly, it is certainly a wonderful, wonderful, amazing time to have you here with us today. Thanks so much for being here. And I want to kick this all off with just having you introduce yourself to our guests and giving us a little background.
Sure. Well, my name is Aisha Braveboy, and I serve as the state's attorney for Prince George's County, Maryland. And so I'm really a daughter of this area, although my father immigrated here from the Spice Island, Grenada. He
Yeah.
immigrated here to go to Howard University.
Oh, well, we share a lot in common. We share a lot in common.
Where he met my mother. She was actually a student both at Howard, and then she ended up graduating from the University of the District of Columbia, but they met on Howard's campus, fell in love, and had two girls, me and my older sister, who is also a Howard graduate. I went to the University of Maryland at College Park for undergrad, but I chose the Howard University School of Law to obtain my Juris Doctorate. So we are a Howard family.
I love it.
Yes.
It's you.
You
Awesome.
know, right? You know. So
Yes.
yeah. So that's my background in terms of my educational background and my connection to HBCUs. I love my HBCUs. I'm always talking about it. But I grew up in this area, first born in DC, but really raised in Prince George's County, to the public schools, went to Maryland and then Howard Law. And I worked a couple of years in the federal government, and then got asked to work for our then county executive. So I spent some time in county government before running for a state delegate. So I was a state delegate for 8 years. I also practiced law at the time, did private practice while I was a delegate. I then ran unsuccessfully. Can't be afraid to put yourself out there sometimes. I ran successfully for Attorney General for the state of Maryland. And I was really the first Black woman to run independently for any statewide office. And so while I did not win that race, I won a lot of other things like the confidence and just more confidence in myself. So I worked for Children's National for a few years before running for state's attorney here in Prince George's County. Was elected in 2018, and I have just been enjoying this job ever since.
Awesome, amazing. So please tell us about some of the responsibilities and the scope of your position as state's attorney.
Sure. Well, most people know the state's attorney as the top prosecutor. We are also considered the top law enforcement office, but I like to think of us more as the top problem-solving office. We solve issues of crime, clearly, and sometimes we do that through the use of prosecution as a tool to hold people accountable. But there are other tools in our toolbox that we use. We have a pretty large diversion program here at the state's attorney's office. We use our discretion to determine whether or not certain charges should be pursued through prosecution, or if we should look at other ways of addressing those issues, which we often use, especially for our more misdemeanor or less serious offenses. And we also work with folks who are reentering our communities. In fact, yesterday, I had the first graduation for what's called our Emerging Adult Program. It's a program, and it's designed to provide those who are age 18 through 26 some character development and enrichment and exposure outside of the criminal justice system to career opportunities and to really navigate life when they do get outside. So these are people who are in prison.
So important, yeah.
They're in prison now, but to me, They are my constituents too. I care about them. I want to see them successful. And while they have to pay a penalty for the crime they committed, I don't believe that that is going to define the rest of their lives. And so we are investing in them. We are working with some amazing nonprofits headed by two brothers who are just so into this. Like, they are inspirational, amazing young men themselves, but who have really, I think, the level of insight into the minds of young people to inspire them to be better. And we had our first graduation yesterday. And so the individuals who were in the program who graduated, they're going to get stepped down in terms of their level of commitment. For some, that means they are going to be released. For others, that means that they are going to be eligible for work release, which gives opportunity to begin to reenter society. So I am super excited. And then after we don't just say, okay, you've gotten the benefit of our program. Now you go out and do your thing. We actually have a portion of our program that assigns a mentor to them, and that will stay with them for as long as the participant wants. They'll them so that they can help encourage them, be their advocate, help them navigate getting back in, getting their driver's license for some of them. Like some of the basic things that that we think, oh yeah, that's simple to do. If you've been locked up since you were 16 or 17 and now you're 21, 22, 23, the world has changed. It's a little different, and we want them to be able to transition successfully.
Certainly. Well, congrats to them on graduating, and congrats to you on the continued success of this program. Talk to me about some of those accomplishments that, you received since being elected, of which you are most proud.
Well, I would say that one of the areas that I have focused on a lot is domestic violence. I had a cousin who was a victim of domestic violence, where she was killed by her abusive husband. And it really affected me, my entire family. And as state attorney, what I hope most is that no other family has to go through that. So I've focused really a lot on, building our capacity there. So one of the areas we believe was important for us to address is strangulation. Strangulation is the most lethal form of domestic violence. An individual who is strangled or choked is like 7 times more likely to end up being a victim of a homicide, a DV homicide. And so we knew that this was an area that we needed to pay special attention to. We went to Annapolis to change the law to make strangulation an enumerated first-degree felony offense, which allows to ask for more serious penalties against those who are committing that type of offense. And in addition to that, we established the first ever protocol for Prince George's County. It's a strangulation protocol for Prince George's County, where we're working not only in our office, but with our dispatchers, our first responders, our police officers or sheriff's deputies, as well as Prince George's Hospital or University of Maryland Capital Region Health Center. We are working with those partners to have this protocol implemented, which from the very first call for a DV call that comes into 911, the questions are being asked about whether or not a person's been choked or strangled. If they have been, then the first responder is instructed to ensure that that individual knows that they can go to the hospital, and we will ask, can we get you to the hospital so that we can get a forensic exam done. The hospital has a special machine called the Cortex Flow that can take a forensic exam of someone's throat that can look at things like cartilage tearing and other signs of trauma to the neck, which would indicate strangulation. So we are really ahead of the game in so many ways on that. And then the results of that examination is provided to our office for the purposes of prosecution. So we are really excited about this. We've had several cases refer through that protocol, and we look forward to trying those cases hopefully in the near future. So that's something I'm extremely proud of. We have seen the number of intimate partner. Domestic violence comes in many forms. But strangulation is typically seen in intimate partner type of cases. And we have actually seen the number of intimate partner domestic violence cases decrease dramatically over the last couple of years. And so we are happy to see that. We're disappointed, of course, to see, just crime in general, go up, not just here in Prince George's, but around the country and around the nation. But we are pleased with the progress that we are making with respect to intimate partner domestic violence. Some other things I'm really proud of. When I came into office, I said that, I am willing to give people second chances. And not only am I working through, this new emerging adult program, but my office was the first office to set up a sentencing review unit. We review sentences of those who believe that they were sentenced unfairly. We have focused a lot of that effort right now on looking at juvenile lifers, people who were sentenced to life or given the equivalent of life sentences as children, as they were 14, 15, 16, 17 when they committed their offense and they were given a life sentence. So we have been reviewing those. So far, we've gotten about 20 people released, and we're working on dozens more. Over 82% of those who were sentenced to life in our state as children were Black children. Black children. That there was a racial disparity in how they've been treated. And so there are people who've been in jail or prison really 20, 30 plus years and who deserve an opportunity for a second look. And we've given that second look. And we have found some really deserving people who have turned their lives around. So I'm really proud of that work as well. In addition to that, I'm so proud of the work we have done around hate crimes. Hate crimes, can occur even in a majority minority town like Prince George. A few years ago, we had a wonderful Bowie State, another fabulous HBCU, Bowie State student. Now he is first lieutenant. He was posthumously promoted to first lieutenant, but at the time he was called second lieutenant. Richard Collins III, who was a Bowie State student, had just got commissioned into the U.S. Army and was really proudly wanting to serve his country. He was celebrating with a friend of his at University of Maryland. And they were, doing the bar crawl, having fun. And then they went to a bus stop so that they could take a bus back to his friend's dorm. And a young man approached them who was a student at the University of Maryland. His name is Sean Urbanski. He approached Second Lieutenant Richard Collins III and two other people who he was standing with, and he stabbed him in his chest. He had a 3-inch knife that went 3.5 inches into his chest, which meant that level of force. Mm-hmm. He was only a Black person there. What we found is that Mr. Urbanski had a racist history. He was a member of an alt-right nation group, social media group. He also had several images on his phone that showed his racism and his, anti-Semitism and everything else. But he was really someone who we believed had committed a hate crime. However, in the state of Maryland, the hate crime statute at the time was so narrow that it was almost impossible to imply, unless, let's say, someone yelled out a racial epithet and then committed a crime. Yeah, because the way the language was written is it says that basically, because of a person's status in a protected class, like a protected minority group, that's why the crime was committed, which limited, which narrowed it and said that you had to prove that was the only reason. Well, at least that's how the judge in this case interpreted it. It was that the state had to prove that race was the only factor in the commission of the crime. And most crimes have more than one motive, right?
Mhm.
Most crimes have mixed motives. And so that barrier was so high. So the judge ultimately dismissed the charge of the hate crime. However, we did convict him on the top charge, which was the first degree murder, which carried life, and he did receive a life sentence. But we didn't think that was good enough. We decided we were going to go to Annapolis to get the law changed so that it could be more applicable in the context of how we know crimes are committed. We know that when race is a factor or a substantial factor in the commission of a crime, that also should be considered a hate crime, and juries should be able to deliberate over that. And so we were able, like right after that verdict, we went to Annapolis that following session and got a bill passed in the name of Second Lieutenant Richard Collins III, which expanded the use of the hate crime statute in the state of Maryland. So I'm so proud that we were able to do that, not only for the Collins family, which they were so proud of because they were a part of that movement, but also for the residents here in the state of Maryland.
Awesome, awesome. Those are some wonderful, wonderful accomplishments. So I'm sure that with all these accomplishments, you have been enjoying the amazing, great parts of the job. But what has been the biggest challenge so far, or the biggest challenges, and how has the pandemic impacted the work you do?
Well, I can tell you the pandemic has presented some very interesting challenges. And I think that as I talk to my colleagues around the country, we're all facing the same challenges, and that is the rise in crime. That has been the biggest challenge. And the difficulty, I think, is that the criminal justice system has also been kind of impacted by the pandemic. So jury trials were stalled for quite some time, at the beginning of the pandemic. Then we had jury trials for a while. And then when we started having the variants, those jury trials again got halted, and so they're not resuming until March. And so there are a lot of cases that are backlogged in the system, and so that means that we have to explain to our victims why their cases, or next of kin, why the cases that they're interested in are not being heard on the date that was originally scheduled, because the court is not open to jury trials at this time. And so all of those trials have to be rescheduled. And so it is really tough, if you can imagine, for victims and next of kin mentally prepared to go through a trial just to be told, well, it's going to be another year potentially. Right. And then just the number of violent crimes that are occurring in our communities, again, all across the country. We're seeing a rise in not just auto theft, but really carjackings, assaults, the use of weapons. One of the things that we have noticed over the past couple of years is that there has been a rise in the use of what is called ghost guns. And these are unserialized weapons. They act like any other gun. They can kill, but unlike a gun that you would purchase at a store that has a serial number, so if you shoot that gun is used, then you can track that gun at least back to the owner. With these ghost guns, they don't have serial numbers. They are unserialized. And so it is nearly impossible to track those guns. In addition to that, if you are, let's say, someone who's prohibited either by age, if you're under 21, or if you have a prior felony, you are prohibited from possessing a weapon, those individuals know that they can go online and buy these ghost guns because they come in kits and they are not regulated like other firearms. They come in kits, they're not fully put together, they're about 80% completed. And so regulated in the same way, so that those guns are being sold to young people people who would otherwise be prohibited from purchasing them, people who may have mental health issues who would be prohibited, and they are being used, unfortunately, in the commission of violent crimes in our communities. And in fact, recently, and at least this is the reports now, I'm sure as the case unfolds, we may learn more things, but as it is reported, the case that occurred recently, the shooting that occurred at Magruder High School in Montgomery County, which is my neighboring jurisdiction, at the high school, that the weapon there, my understanding, they suspect that it was one of these unserialized ghost guns that were purchased online by someone underage. So this is a big problem that we are now looking to Annapolis to assist us with. So there's legislation there in Annapolis that would regulate the sale of those firearms here in the state of Maryland. So we have a lot of work.
Yes.
But there's challenges, but you know what, there are opportunities too, because what I do know is that violence will not rule the day, either here in County or in the state of Maryland. But we have to be vigilant. We have to use our law enforcement resources, but we also need to use our healthcare resources. We have so many people who are suffering from mental illness and from addictions. And if we undervalue or underestimate the impact of those conditions on crime, then we're not doing ourselves any service. Because those things are real. People who are committing offenses, many of them, I'm not saying all, and I'm not trying to use it as an excuse. I'm just saying, here's the issue we have. We have people who have mental health issues. We have people who've had learning disabilities that may have, just social emotional issues as a result of not being able to really perform in school and live up to certain expectations that they may have of themselves or others may have of them. And so they engage in this antisocial behavior as a way of and so again, it's not an excuse, but it's reality. And if we don't begin to address those issues that we know are real, then unfortunately, we're going to see a level of crime continue in our communities all across this country. So we have to have not only a law enforcement response, but a healthcare response as well.
Certainly, certainly. Well, what actions would you encourage county residents to take to improve their communities, particularly in regards to crime and public safety?
Well, I can tell you one of the things, the best tools that we have seen is the use of Ring video or other type of video monitoring systems that people have for their homes. I can't tell the number of crimes that have been committed where we are able to identify suspects as a result of a Ring video camera. I can tell you there was actually a homicide that was committed right on the border in the Fairmont Heights area where there was no suspect at all. And it just so happened that one of the neighbors was looking at their Ring video and saw the vehicle that was involved in the incident, back up. And you could see from that Ring video the license plate. And that's how we were able to identify a suspect in that case. So I can tell you that that is a great tool. Also, making sure that your neighborhood has the appropriate lighting. Lighting is a deterrent because oftentimes crime follows the path of least resistance. So where people think, hey, people are watching them, looking, they're typically not going to commit those areas. I'm not saying that's 100% true, but for the most part, that is, what we've seen is that when areas are well lit, and again, where there's a level of home surveillance, that we are not seeing as much crime in those areas. So we do encourage people to use those as tools.
That is so important. That's so important to know, because I know that, we can all see that the crime has been going up. And any way that as the community that we are able to help in any way, that of course is certainly important. Tell us more about the Public Integrity Unit and the Conviction and Sentencing Integrity Unit.
So our Public Integrity Unit is a unit that focuses on investigating public corruption cases that could involve civilians who are in public service, including elected officials or government officials. That unit also looks into cases of police or law enforcement misconduct or use of force cases. And so that unit is quite active. We review all of the police involved shootings, whether they are fatal or non-fatal, or really any discharge of a police firearm. So we review those to determine whether or not we want to pursue charges in that case against the officer. We also look at other types of use of force cases, whether it's an assault or something else. And so we have had, several cases where we have indicted police officers. We've had about, I think, 4 officers so far that have gone to trial. We have gotten convictions in all of those cases, and the other cases are pending. Again, because of the pandemic, we haven't had the ability to try all of them. But for the ones that we have, I think we've tried 3, and then we had 1 plea. So far, we have been successful in holding those individuals accountable because there's one set of laws, and that applies to everyone. And so our job is to hold everybody accountable. And we've also indicted a number of firefighters who were involved in a arson scheme. Yeah, so it's not just police officers. Sometimes it's even our firefighters, and then we've had other public officials who have used their positions to benefit themselves, and so we are working on prosecuting in those cases as well. And then so that's what that unit does, and then our conviction, and sentencing integrity unit is a unit designed to review cases where people are claiming absolute innocence. So people who are have been prosecuted, convicted, sentenced, they may still be serving a sentence. They may have already served their sentence, but if they believe that they were improperly convicted, then they can apply to that unit. We have a grant from the Department of Justice where we're working with the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project to review those cases and determine whether or not we should take an action. In addition to that, that is the unit that reviews the excessive sentencing cases or the unfair sentencing cases. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been able to, get several individuals released through that. And we are also working on dozens more motions that we're filing. We believe that this is a way to address the issue of mass incarceration. We understand that people should be held accountable, and they will be held accountable. And we seek tough sentences when people, commit serious crimes against our community. But we also know that the justice system does not end at sentencing. It does not end at sentencing, and that we must be open to review sentences, because sometimes the justice system gets it wrong. Sometimes people are over sentenced. We've had cases where people were sentenced to more than double the guidelines set for that particular type of charge or conviction. And so we have to review those cases, because it will not be fair, or would not be fair, for someone to have been sentenced far longer just because, let's say, a judge is a hard judge, and that judge decided to sentence them longer than another judge would have been under those circumstances. That's why we have guidelines to ensure that there's some level of parity in terms of sentencing. And so when we look at cases in which judges go far exceed those guidelines, we must determine whether or not that was fair. And so we've had cases like that as well, that where we have asked the court to reconsider those sentences successfully. So it's it's not a function that I think a lot of people think about that prosecutors can do, but from my perspective, being the top law enforcement officer is not simply about prosecutions, it's about justice. And so you have to seek justice for everyone in the system.
Certainly. And let's delve a little into the criminal justice system. And, there are members of the public who are concerned about social justice issues and feel that after all, the recent protests and calls for reform, that too little has changed in the criminal justice system. What would you say to those members of the public?
I would say that, there are a lot of changes that have been made. And can we continue to make changes? Absolutely. We know that this system has been unfair, especially to Black and Brown people. And so it is incumbent upon those of us who are in positions of power and authority to do our part to show what can be done in a system. And so I do agree that, things haven't changed to a level where we do have that level of parity, but I don't believe that things have not changed at all. And so sometimes change, takes time, but we're doing the hard work here in Prince George's County, and we want to serve as a model for other state attorney's offices or district attorney's offices across the country.
Awesome. Now, what would you want your legacy to be as Prince George's County State's Attorney?
You know what? My legacy I would like to leave is one of hope. I think there's a deficit of hope sometimes in our communities for our victims. Sometimes they feel hopeless that they won't get justice, or that, the needs that they have even after they may have received what we can provide in the justice system, which is a level of accountability for those who have offended them. I want them to hope for a better tomorrow. I want them to know that, we have their back, that we will provide them services so that they can have a better tomorrow. And for those who have committed offenses and who are living behind the walls, I want them to have hope too. I want them to have hope that someone sees them. I see them. I believe in them. I know that for many of them, they're coming back out here, and we want to embrace them. We want them to be successful. And I remember talking to one of the juvenile lifers who we were able to have released. And he said to me that, the guys, behind the wall, they know me and they know Aisha Braveboy, because they know that, several of them and their friends have been looked at or have been released as a result of the work that I said I was going to do, and that they heard me when I became state's attorney talk about my commitment to reviewing unfair sentences. And that when I talked about that, they were listening to the news. And when I talked about that, they said that was the first time that they had hope that they would not die in prison. The first time they had hope since they were like 16, 17,
Wow.
die in prison. So I can't tell you how that makes me feel as a human being. But what I can say is that everyone should have hope, no matter where you live, no matter your circumstance. Hope is something that just keeps you moving. And so I would like my legacy to be one of hope.
That is great to end on. So finally, how can people keep up with you, whatever you're doing, whatever the office is doing? How can they keep up and follow?
Well, we must have you keep up with us. We want to interact with you. So if you could follow us, we're on all forms of social media at PGSAO News, at PGSAO News. And then also on Twitter, you can tag me at SA Braveboy. That's SABRAVEBOY.
Thank you so much. And to our viewers, those links will be in the description below. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such a pleasure. And thank you for the work that you are doing and will continue to do in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to our viewers, please make sure that you follow Team Racing Productions on all forms of social media. And most of all, thank you for watching. Bye.
Thank you.